Hello and welcome. We'll be starting shortly. Good morning. Good morning. As you come in, we'll be starting shortly. Just waiting for others to join the space. All right. So we'll get going, and others will join in as they do, and we'll just get ourselves moving forward. So I want to start out by really thanking you for being here. Welcome. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to take this time today to spend a little bit of time on yourself, investing in your personal growth and exploring this topic of mental saboteurs and how to build strength through mental fitness. So we'll dive right in. Let me tell you a little bit about myself if you're not familiar with me. My name is Lauren Crawford, and I'm a mental fitness and purpose coach. I primarily work with men who are navigating that significant and often challenging midlife transition. My personal journey has been over 30 years as a meditator and spiritual seeker, and I've explored many paths of inner peace and being more effective in my life. And when I discovered something called positive intelligence a few months back, it truly led to one of the biggest breakthroughs of my life, to be honest. And I'm incredibly excited to share more about it with you today. So what are we going to be covering? There's primarily going to be three areas of our agenda for today, and we'll be here for about a half hour or so. What we're going to do in this is look at the foundational aspects of living with a more fulfilled and intentional life. First, we're going to explore why we often feel like we are living in autopilot, and maybe we're not even conscious of that. That feeling like we're just going through the motions. It will impact you from time to time, but oftentimes we're just so in it, we're not even aware of it. So we'll look at that. Second, we'll peel back the layers and understand what are these saboteurs and how do they show up in our lives. And then finally, the most exciting part in many ways is I'm going to introduce you to how to shift to what we call sage mode. And this will include a little bit of a guided practice for you so that you can get a flavor of how this works and immediately without having to wait. Now, if at any time during this presentation you feel compelled, this is resonating with you, you're nodding along as we go, then I warmly invite you to take the free Insightful Saboteur assessment. It's a powerful first step for you. And I'll tell you more about that in the end. I do have a QR code in the upper corner of the screen, which will allow you access to that opportunity. So you may want to grab a pen and paper, jot down any thoughts or ideas that come up along the way. There might be an aha moment or two that you have. And also, I'm going to leave some time for a Q&A at the end in case any of you have additional questions. All right. So let's move into this idea of why we live in autopilot, usually more than we realize. So we'll start with the question many of us might ponder, and that's why do we often feel like we're just reacting to life rather than consciously creating it? The answer in large part lies in our brain patterns. It's pretty complex, but I'm going to try to keep this brain stuff pretty simple, especially if there's scientists in the room, neuroscientists. We're going to keep it at a very entry level, right? So we have these brain patterns, and by midlife, many of those pathways are, for lack of a better term, baked in. our default mode network is incredibly active, and it's doing things to help us be and live more efficiently in many ways. And that creates this notion, this idea of being in autopilot. So we're not consciously thinking about every little thing that we're doing. So if you think about it, all of our life experiences, all of the teachings that we've received, every lesson in life, all of the environments that have shaped how we think, how we feel, and even how we behave, these become deeply ingrained patterns. There's not a lot that's new and novel after our mid to late 30s. Much of this is stored in our subconscious. And here's what's surprising to most of us is, well, we think we're consciously sort of running the show and control of our lives. It's often the subconscious that is truly pulling the strings. It's remarkably efficient, but the truth behind that too is it's not always aligned with our highest good, because it's operating out of habit, out of default. So that default mode network allows us to navigate life efficiently. As I said, we don't need to be 100% conscious of everything that's happening around us. That would just be simply exhausting and overwhelming, and unsustainable as well. So it's about 95% of what we're doing daily is in fact happening in autopilot. I know, shocking, right? Let's use the driving example. So imagine driving to work. How many of you would take the same route every day? Or even going to a familiar location? We generally take the same route every day. And do you remember every single turn, every single traffic light on that pathway? Probably not. You just seem to get there, right? That's your brain working on autopilot, efficiently getting you from point A to point B without requiring an intense amount of conscious effort and focus. It's creating routines for tasks. But what about when it applies to our emotions, our relationships, our responses, and to stress as well? You know, I want to continue in this driving example. I moved to Vancouver Island a few years ago, and I didn't have a car for the first couple of years. And I decided, hey, I'm not seeing enough of this place. So I did buy a car. And those first few times driving, it was like, whoa, super intensity around, the consciousness that's required. Shortly thereafter, I took a trip to Alberta, going through the Rocky Mountains. And if any of you have driven in extreme mountainous regions, it's white knuckling a lot of the time. So after that trip, and when I got home, I realized my driving had very much shifted into autopilot mode. Going anywhere locally, it's almost like I'm paying zero attention. So this is an example of how that autopilot really, really kicks in. For me, it was a refresher in driving. So what is this mode of autopilot that dominates us? Think of it as what we'll call the left brain. So we know the brain is divided into hemispheres, right? And the left brain is the domain of logic, of rational, critical, linear thinking. And it's always engaged. It's running 24/7. And while this is essential for sure, when it's always running the show, we can get caught up in analytical looping that keeps us kind of stuck. So we're going through these looping thoughts. And it might be similar thoughts, but in the same vein, a different hue of that thought, for example. So we tend to process our lives, make decisions, and respond to the challenges primarily through this left brain lens. And this can lead to thinking that's kind of tight and contracted. And all too often it's fear-based. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I shouldn't do this. Oh, fear, fear. Rarely engaging rather the expansive, creative right side of the brain. It's a very different environment on the right side of the brain. And this is where our saboteurs come from. So they are born of this fear-based thinking. They effectively run the show very clearly, disguising themselves as strengths. So they whisper lies into our ears, convincing us that we need them, that they're protecting us. But in reality, they keep us from exploring and becoming bigger, more authentic versions of ourselves. And this isn't unique to any one person or any profession, for example. This happens on all levels of society. You could be a CEO leading a multi-level, multinational company of, you know, of employees and thousands, uh, impacting society in a powerful way. Or you could be a frontline worker. So whether you are that CEO or that frontline worker, these saboteurs are going to hijack you, us, and keep us trapped in that left brain analysis paralysis, trying to think our way through everything. When ironically or paradoxically, overthinking is often what gets us into these problems, these patterns in the first place. So to summarize, the saboteur brain is the left brain, stuck in fear, in overanalysis. The sage brain, which we'll explore in just a bit, so stick around because I want to share more of that with you, is the right brain. It's the expansive, creative, and resourcefulness within all of us. So be sure to, stick around and let me share that part of this journey with you. To illustrate this, I want to ask you a few simple questions for your reflection, and just write down anything that comes up that you find compelling that you want to document, and not just reflect. Do you find yourself taking that same route every day without really noticing the scenery or any of the things that surround you, the notable checkpoints along that route? So is that you taking that same route every day in autopilot? Do you experience often the same arguments playing out repeatedly with, well, it could be your intimate partner, it could be another family member, it may be a colleague at work. Are we having this discussion yet again? It keeps coming up. Do the same issues and even the same people trigger you at work, causing you to act in, frankly, very predictable ways? When you get home, do you have a specific go-to in terms of snacks or after-work habits that you fall into without any thought? And do you have obligatory family visits? Might be another good example. Those obligatory family visits where you often are in the exact sort of like an emotional script playing out year after year. I know for me, when I visit my family, I tend to find myself being that angry teenager again and wondering, why is this happening? So these default modes are very real. And this habit stuff is very deeply ingrained. This is what living in autopilot looks like. And chances are when this is happening, your saboteurs are at play. So I want to share with you a couple stories. For me, my primary saboteur is the hyperachiever. And this achieving kind of drive that I've had all of my life has really been there. And, I've been this hardworking guy. I prided myself on this idea that, I'd go that extra yard. And I learned this, frankly, through my parents, who were both incredibly hard workers and very proud of that fact. For me, by my early midlife, I found myself actually juggling two concurrent careers because, of course, just having one career wasn't enough. And my breadwinning career, that primary day job, provided stability, benefits, and a pension. But my second career, well, that was my passion, my love, and that was yoga. So I ran a yoga program and even a small yoga studio aside from having this full-time job. So, achieve some more. I worked my butt off, constantly trying new things, always striving for more, never quite finding the monetary success that I was chasing. But I did have a lot of small wins. Here's the thing, though. Hyperachievers don't celebrate their wins. They just keep moving on. So my hyperachiever ensured that self-love was conditional upon my achievements. And so I was always moving forward, trying to achieve more. And for the hyperachiever, nothing is really truly ever done or good enough. And something that fails, well, we don't always take the time to examine, to explore, to analyze what was going on, what happened, do that thorough assessment. No, we just move into the next thing. So we don't celebrate, nor do we do the analysis to get better. And this is just the way of life that I was in for decades. By the time COVID hit, however, my hyperachiever had driven me into such a state of being overextended. I was burnt out, and ultimately this led to bankruptcy. And it wasn't until I truly started to understand these patterns that were going on that I realized how much the saboteur had been running the show, quite literally, for years. I want to share another example of a different saboteur. And this is a client that I work with locally here, who I met, and she wanted to explore some stuff with me as her coach. An incredibly talented person. And she studied art in graduate school and had celebrated artist parents. But very shortly after graduating, her avoider took over and said, "You can't do this. You will never be the success that your parents are. And how are you going to make a living in art? You'll never be good enough." And so that avoider part of her sabotaged her artistic pursuits. She did keep it as a hobby, as sort of a side thing for her personally, but she chose a whole different professional path. And when that path was sunsetting, this is when she and I started to have our discussions, and she started to work with me. And what we discovered was this avoider saboteur doing its nasty work. She was able to wrestle with that, to adjust that, and then to dive into doing what she's always wanted to do, to reclaim her artistic side in a very powerful way. And within quite literally a matter of weeks, she had an artistic workspace. She was in an artist collective and planning her first exhibit for this fall. So perhaps her acclaim as an artist is yet to be seen. I certainly hope so. She decided to confront that saboteur of hers, that avoider, and her life totally turned around. So on your end, I'd like you to take a moment just to reflect. Where might you see some saboteur patterns on repeat in your life? And even if you don't know yet all of these various saboteurs, I'm going to introduce a few of them in a minute. But where do you see some of these repeating patterns playing out in your life? And what might they be costing you to live in this sort of autopilot route that you're on? You can just jot that down, take a moment to reflect. So what saboteurs or what autopilot modes might be wreaking some havoc in your life? Great. So just wrapping that up, and then we'll move into the next section here. And this is about exploring saboteurs a little bit more, and these fear-based mental habits that really aren't your true nature, your true self. So we all have these saboteurs, and let's get into the heart of them and explore what they are a little bit more. And knowing that we all have them, I want you to understand that this doesn't mean that you're flawed or you're broken in any way, shape, or form, because these are universal patterns. And whatever your upbringing may have been, you may have had a perfectly idyllic childhood, or maybe not, or regardless of your current lot in life, these saboteurs are going to be playing out because they're deeply ingrained. And these are fear-based habits that largely stem from our childhoods. So think of our innate drive as humans, and all creatures for that matter. When they're born, we have a drive to stay alive. That's part of the whole thing of being brought into this world, right? We have innate energies around needing to be safe and to stay alive. And humans are no exception. From day one, infants develop these survival strengths. And these are really created to address the fears that infants have when they come into this big, scary world. They need physical and emotional safety. and they quickly learn how to get it. Over the years, though, these strengths will stick around. That's not a bad thing. But the problem of that, the kicker, is that they become our saboteurs who begin to distort, overuse, and even abuse these very strengths that once served us, that once met our needs for safety. The safety mechanism that was absolutely essential when we were kids are in most cases no longer essential or helpful even as adults. Yet the saboteurs leverage these old programs and mess with us and keep us small, keep us from exploring some of the bigger aspects of us. They try to keep us safe. That's one of the lies that they tell us. And the thing is, they're no longer serving our overall growth. They'll tell us otherwise, though. And let's explore that now, the lies. I'm going to walk you through some of the most common saboteurs and the subtle yet powerful lies that are projected, those inner voices. And you'll recognize this, I think. These lies convince us that the saboteurs have our best interests at heart. There's an overarching judge. So the judge is that universal saboteur, shall we say, master of all self-criticism and the one that judges others and circumstances. Its lie, well, you're not good enough, or they're not good enough, or this situation is fundamentally flawed. And you can extrapolate from those statements how this plays out constantly, day after day after day. And the judge itself is supported by 9 accomplice saboteurs. We're not going to explore all 9 today. We hopefully will be able to in the future, but let's look at some of the main ones. So I've already talked about the avoider. Let's explore that a little bit more. So my client, the avoider that she was dealing with, this saboteur encourages procrastination, distraction, keeping you from maybe uncomfortable feelings or tasks, or in her case, a life path. The lie that it tells you, it's easier just to stay comfortable. Oh, just put it off. You'll feel better later. So this idea of avoiding, it's quite obvious. And you'll know where that shows up in your life. It could be those uncomfortable conversations, right? It could be doing tasks that don't resonate with you. For me as a virtual entrepreneur, it's doing metrics and tracking all of these various things that I do online to see what's working and not makes me insane. So I avoid it. Hyperachiever. So I shared with you my hyperachiever, but let's dissect that a little bit more. This one has a restless kind of energy to it. There is another restless saboteur, by the way, and they kind of bump up against each other and play off of each other. I definitely have the restless as well. But that energy of needing external results and constant accomplishments, this idea of more is more, right? And its lie is that your worth is exactly equal to your success. And if you have, like me, success kind of misconstrued as a certain financial number, then until you get to that number, you will not feel like you're successful. And then as we evolve, we realize that success is way more than any magic number. It's the journey that we're on. So more accomplishments for the overachiever means more value. And again, not a lot of time in there for unconditional love. Your love for self and for others really is very, very conditional, which is unfortunate. Let's look at the pleaser. So this saboteur prioritizes pleasing others to gain acceptance and affection, often at the expense of your own needs. Its lie, well, if everyone else is happy, then it'll be okay and I'll be loved. So it's this placating and making sure that everyone's happy. And sometimes it's that sort of image of moving the things around on the tabletop to make everything better, when in fact, a lot of that stuff just needs to go. Let's look at the controller. This is the final one we'll explore for today. And this saboteur needs to be in charge. to dictate action and to manage people and situations through its anxiety around needing to do that. And some of you will maybe have controlling saboteur energies primarily or in an exaggerated kind of way, or you will know of people who are controllers. And so what's the lie that it tells? If I don't take charge, things will fall apart and it will be a disaster. So the controller needs to be in charge of everything. And I know in my corporate life for 3 years, I had a director who was an intense controller. And it was the most demoralizing 3 years of my career, because when you're working under someone like that, you can't do anything right. And anything you do will have to be modified, changed, etc. So it's very, very unhelpful for team work and that sort of thing, and for leadership. So these are just a few examples of the saboteurs, and that can give you a sense of how these internal voices operate and how they sabotage us. So let's look at the brain science behind this. Again, keeping this super simple, but to understand how we shift into this stuff or how it works, this can be helpful, though, to look at how the brain plays in these scenarios. So I'd like you to think of the saboteur as left brain, specifically the amygdala. So your saboteurs are left brain, logical, analytical, language-based center, left. And critically, though, they are steeped in fear and highly activated by the amygdala, which is the primitive part of the brain. And it's really responsible for the fight, flight, freeze response. And this is where a lot of us gets kind of stuck in our living, very much in that autonomic nervous system, sympathetic side, fight, flight, or freeze, related to how the brain and the amygdala are processing information. So here's a powerful insight. Fear attracts more fear. So when these saboteurs are activated, they begin to play off each other and exacerbate the situations, the thought processes, and the decisions that we're trying to make. And it creates a really powerful, in a negative way, a really negatively powerful feedback loop that we get stuck in. Biologically, we are wired for 5 times more. We are predisposed for 5 times more negativity than positivity. And that's just because of our biology and how we've evolved as humans. It's not a characteristics flaw. It's really part of the survival mechanism that we have had over the millennia. So we need to detect things to stay alive. And that's where this came from. But now how that plays out is just in these states of being locked into chronic stress and negativity. The left brain, that saboteur-driven activity, is language-based. So it's a constant internal monologue, which is frankly exhausting. So think of when we wake up in the middle of the night, ruminating about this, that, or the other thing. Just so many thoughts going at, rapid speed that we can barely control. PQ reps, which we're going to talk about shortly, actually can help a lot with that. That's what I've realized. Powerful. So let's explore then right brain. So we just did a little bit of the brain left side. Let's look at the flip side. So we call this the sage brain. And frankly, this is where the magic happens. This is where we start to get into the positive side of all this. The sage is associated with the right brain. And this is a domain where we find expansion. The left side is contraction. It's tight. It's wound up. So this right side is more of a free flow of creative energies. And what you find here as your creativity emerges is there's a lot of imagery that helps to impact and activate this, and a lot of visual aspects to these creative energies. It is really the ultimate in energizing, getting out of that tight contracted into this expansive and growth oriented area. The sage also is leveraging the prefrontal cortex. And We think of the prefrontal cortex as the wise leader of your brain. It's responsible for calm, clear thinking, for empathy, for exploring, for innovating, and navigating challenges from a place of curiosity rather than fear. I'm going to read that again, share that with you again, because it's so powerful. It's responsible for calm, clear thinking, empathy, exploring, innovating, and navigating challenges with curiosity rather than fear. So imagine living in that space of the right brain, in that sage brain more frequently, more often. How would that benefit you? So the key takeaway is you cannot be in both the saboteur, left brain, left amygdala aspect of the brain, and this at the same time, the sage, the right brain, prefrontal cortex. You can't be in both of those at once. It's either or. It's like a switch needs to be made. But the crucial part that I want to share with you is that you can train your brain. And that can make this shifting into the sage brain quicker and more consistent. Here's a good way to look at this, a more tangible way, maybe by way of metaphor. The saboteur mode is like being stuck in a massive freeway traffic jam. So think of that. It's rush hour. You're stuck in this gridlock of incrementally moving forward inch by inch by inch. It's so frustrating. It's so noisy. It's chaotic, and you feel trapped, unable to move forward. And that left brain is looping in this bumper to bumper. It's thinking and judging others. It's thinking and judging the situation. It's thinking and judging you for allowing yourself to be in that situation. The sage mode, on the other hand, is think of you're on a beautiful mountain overlook, high above that same traffic jam. And from this perch, you can see the entire situation. You have a different perspective, and you can feel calm, and you can breathe, and you can clearly see multiple pathways and solutions that weren't visible by being stuck in that gridlock. So it's more spacious. The good news is saboteurs are not who you are. So we want to avoid the language of I am, like I would not say I am a hyperachiever. It's part of that voice that's inside of me. So I have those characteristics. They are habits. They're deeply ingrained mental patterns that continue to play out. And positive intelligence gives us a clear, actionable pathway out of that traffic jam and onto that mountain overlook. And I'm going to show you how now. So let's move into exploring how you can train your brain using what are known as PQ reps. So this is really, really powerful. So I think I mentioned earlier that, I've been doing this meditation journey and self-discovery work of personal development and spiritual seeking for 30 years. And a long time in that period, or for that period, I felt like I'd arrived at some sort of mastery of my mind. And I believed that I was operating from a place of conscious awareness, a large part of the time, not living 95% in autopilot. Well, maybe I was wrong. When I started my coaching journey a number of years ago, what became clear to me through the eyes of my coach at the time and through deeper self-reflection was that that wasn't the case. I hadn't mastered my mind to the degree that I thought I had. I wasn't living as consciously as I thought I was. My saboteurs were still very much at play, subtly influencing all of my decisions and my reactions. With positive intelligence, when I discovered this gem, we call it PQ, it sort of dropped into my lap a while ago, and I really see it as a profound gift. It totally aligned with my worldview and my beliefs, frankly, which was really, really helpful. This idea of how we can be mindful in our lives and how we can strive for personal growth and growing into our best versions of ourselves. But it offered something much more effective and accelerated than what I'd been doing for years. I was hooked within just 7 weeks of doing this simple yet incredibly powerful foundational work in PQ. I realized some really profound shifts in my performance, in the work that I do, in my relationships, and critically in my overall well-being, which was so powerful. I thought I'd already gotten there, and it's like, oh my gosh, I have so much more to explore and to grow into, which excites me. I'm literally a different person today than I was just a few months ago. It's accelerated my journey and the self-actualization that I've been seeking for the last few decades. And it's moved that forward in ways that my meditation practice simply alone wasn't given me. It's so powerful, so transformative. And I want to make it part of everything that I do as a coach, so part of my coaching practice. And I'm going to give you a flavor of it right now, just so that you can have a sense of its power. And this will only take a couple of minutes. So I'm going to invite you to explore these PQ reps with me. They're very simple and incredibly effective. And that's what hopefully you'll see and experience here. So I'm going to invite you to go along with this. And if you can, close your eyes and just settle in. And if you're not in a comfortable situation for closing your eyes, maybe just soften your gaze and look down. So now settled in there, bring awareness to your body, sitting in your chair, and feel that weight of your body. Feel your feet connected to the floor. Now gently bring your awareness to your breath and just notice it for a moment. And you can take a few deeper inhalations and exhalations. Breathing through the inhalation through the nose, the exhalation through the mouth or the nose. And then let the breath resume. And for the next little while, just simply watch the movement of the breath, the chest or the abdomen gently rising or falling, just connecting to that rhythm of the body breathing. And next, I invite you to notice the temperature of the air as it enters and leaves your nostrils. How it's slightly cooler on the inhale, slightly warmer on the exhale. Just be open, the curious observer. Now bring your index finger and thumb tips together on one of your hands, whichever hand, and gently begin to rub up and down with such awareness that you'll start to feel the texture of the skin, various sensations, even beginning to notice the ridges of the fingertips. If your mind is wandering off, just bring it back here. That's great. And then gently return to your breath. Just being aware one more time of the movement of the breath in and out. And before opening your eyes, just pause and notice, how different do you feel right now? How has that impacted you? Very good. Opening your eyes and maybe jot down what you noticed from that experience. In such a short time, many people will experience an immediate shift, transition from that noisy, active saboteur left brain to a more powerful sort of state of presence and calm on the right side, the sage brain. So these are examples of PQ reps. They're like doing a mental push-up or bicep curl. When we go to the gym, we have to do reps of certain exercises, right, to build physical muscle. But here, we're building mental muscle. So we do these PQ reps. They build your mental fitness. And the more you do them, the stronger you make these neural pathways to your sage brain. Just a few minutes a day will take you forward in ways that's, in my experience, almost unfathomably hard to believe how powerful it is. So the sage brain makes it easier and quicker to access peace, clarity, resourcefulness, instead of getting hijacked by the saboteurs. So effectively, what's happening here is we're shifting from the noise, shifting from the thinking, that overanalyzing and that spiraling, that hamster wheel of nonstop thought, into presence. And presence, there's power in presence. This is where and how we shift and change. And these reps, as I said, will build mental fitness. So you're going to have stronger sage pathways and get out of these habit autopilot modes. I'm going to wrap up now and asking you just a few reflective questions again. Take some time with these. What would life look like without saboteurs running the show? So how different would your life look without saboteurs running the show? What would be different? It could be in terms of performance. It could be in terms of relationships. It could be in terms of your well-being. What if your mental fitness was stronger? So you were doing these PQ reps regularly and you developed greater mental fitness. What would that look like? And perhaps most importantly and profoundly, what would life look like living in sage mode most of the time, rather than being hijacked by the saboteurs? What would that be like? Wonderful. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'd love to have you take the free saboteur assessment using the QR code. You can do that. And I can also include a link for you in the chat. And as I do that, I'll just open up to see if there are any questions. You can just type them into your chat. Not seeing anything come up presently, so I may have done a wonderful job communicating all of this. My saboteurs didn't get in the way. I stayed in my sage mode throughout. So that's great. I'm really grateful for you being here and giving me the opportunity to share this information and these insights into the workings of our brain and how we can use mental fitness as a vehicle, a tool to transform how we show up for our lives and to live with that more enhanced fulfillment and living with greater peace and joy and abundance. So I invite you to connect for further exploration and look forward to seeing you soon. Take good care.